Hello. So it is officially 3:15. So thank you for all of our amazing students and all of our wonderful panelists for joining us today for the STEM career panel. I'd like to formally welcome everyone who's here from the ASAP staff, who always collaborates and supports one another, to our students who are always eager to learn and grow as young professionals. So thank you for being here, and definitely to our panelists. So before we officially started, I'm going to go over the agenda, and I'm going to ask that everyone mute themselves if you are not speaking. We are going to talk about the code of conduct and what the group expectations are. And then, of course, we're going to meet the panelists, and we're going to have an opportunity to have a Q&A and some final thoughts, and of course, our survey. So we do ask that you stay till the end. That way you can definitely fill out the survey and get credit for being here today. All right, so we just want to remind everyone that is here on the ASAP Code of Conduct. And speaking about the Code of Conduct, we ask to all of our students that you please make sure that once you're coming into any ASAP event, including this one, you sign in utilizing your first and last name. If you didn't do that before coming into this session, that's okay. There's always a way that you can rename yourself. You would hover over your name, and there's something that says unmute or mute, and then it says more. You'd click on more, and there's an option there where you can rename yourself. Okay, so again, we ask that anytime you join in, you make sure you join with your first and last name. You never need to sign into any ASAP event using your EMPL. Just your first and last name is fine. All students are welcome into the ASAP community with the understanding that this is your academic support and family. We are truly a community, all right? All the members of our community are required to be respectful to instructors, fellow students, all college personnel, and definitely the panelists that are here today. In addition to complying to the ASAP benchmarks in advisement, career, and transfer, all students are expected and required, and very importantly, contractually obligated to behave in a manner that is exemplary. If someone acts in a manner that is disrespectful with either an advisor or a fellow student, this is actually grounds for termination of benefits. And depending on the severity, it could mean immediate program expulsion. So please make sure that we are all respectful of one another. We are all different, and we are here to respect each other's views, opinions. So that's just a quick reminder on the ASAP Code of Conduct. And if I don't think I introduced myself. I think I just started talking. My name is Rocio Reynoso, and I am the career specialist with ASAP. And I'd like to introduce Lucila Sanchez, and she is going to moderate and facilitate this event with me. And she's going to talk a little bit about the expectations for today's event.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucila Sanchez, like Rocio mentioned. I'm an ASAP academic advisor. So I'm basically an advisor like the one that you have here. So we help with everything, basically. So to go over the group expectations, there's a couple of things. The first thing, which Rocio mentioned in our code of conduct, is just to be respectful. If someone says something that you don't agree with, say it in the nicest way possible. We do want you to use the chat to comment and ask questions, but we want you to be respectful. So think about how would you feel if you were told that. Again, use appropriate language. Remember, this is an academic event. It's not technically like a social event, and it's also a career event. So if you were in a panel with potential employers, how would you want them to view you? So think about using that type of language. The third is to please be mindful of turning off your microphones so that we can hear the panelists as they're speaking and hear Rocio and myself as we're moderating. No judgment, right? Like, we want to understand that everyone is different and everyone has different opinions and contributions. So if you see someone say something that you don't agree with. If it's not like my mom always says, if it's not nice, don't say anything. And then finally, please utilize the chat to ask questions and engage. Remember, this is for you. We put these events together for you so that you can take something away from them. And if you're confused or have questions, that's what the chat is for. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you have like a burning question, don't worry, we can, yes, it does count as group advisement and career event. But yeah, if you have a burning question, put it in the chat. We'll be moderating so that we can answer them towards the end, because ideally they'll be answering your questions as we go along.
Thank you, Lucila. Yes. So someone will definitely be moderating the chat, and questions will be posed to the panelists based on whatever you want whatever you're interested in learning more about. All right, so please make sure you stay till the end. This event is scheduled to go till 4:30. So please be respectful of everyone's time. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to start introducing our amazing panelists, and they're each gonna introduce themselves. So I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Ali Brashears, and she is one of our amazing faculty members. And she's just wonderful, and I love to hear her story and love her commitment to students. So Dr. Brashears, please, welcome. Dr. Brashears, if you're talking, you're muted.
Yeah, she just put in the chat that she needs to be made a co-host to be unmuted. So.
Yay, I'm unmuted.
Yay. Technology.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a lovely introduction. I love working with ASAP. ASAP students are some of my favorite students. And so I'm a biologist by trade. I teach in the Natural Sciences Department. I teach General Biology 1, General Biology 2, Life in the Universe, which is like astrobiology. And my career path, I think the best thing that can be said about my career path is, and my educational path, is that it was very windy. It did not go the way anybody would have planned. So I grew up in a very small town in southern Colorado, which, and when I mean small, I mean 750 people. So there really were more horses and cows than people in the town that I grew up in, and very few people actually went to college. It was not really expected that I would go to college. So after I started working when I was 13 years old, and when I graduated high school, I just kept on working. There was no real expectation that I would go to college. And I did all sorts of jobs in retail. I was a nursing assistant in hospitals. I was a truck driver for a while. I just did a lot of stuff that you do, you know, to make a living. And when I was 25, I went back to school. I had a friend who sort of convinced me that I should try it. And as you guys know, if you work your way through school, it is incredibly difficult, and you're tired all the time, and you are just stressed all the time. And that was sort of my undergraduate experience, but I really loved it. I started out in engineering and then switched to molecular biology and got my bachelor's in molecular biology. And was lucky enough to get a job in a laboratory when I was an undergrad. And getting a job in a laboratory really changed my direction, because it enabled me to see myself in science, which I don't think before that I'd really thought it could actually happen. So after I got my bachelor's, people thought I should go work in biotechnology or do a PhD in cancer research, and instead I chose a very lucrative career of evolutionary physiology, which was a very hot topic back in the 1800s and is not such a hot topic anymore. But I just really loved it, and I wanted to explore how things evolve and how systems like heart systems and brain systems and all of these things evolve. And so I did a PhD in evolutionary physiology. It took 6 years. So if you're counting, that's 10 years of school. And then afterwards, I got different professor positions, one in upstate New York. I taught at a very small liberal arts college. And then I moved out to San Diego, and I got a job working at a community college in San Diego. And then I got this wonderful job at LaGuardia, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. And so it's been a very long, windy path, and I don't think anybody at the beginning could have predicted that this is how it was going to turn out. I'm the only person in my family. My mom has never even been to New York City. So my mom does not know what New York City looks like. She only sees it on the news. I think only, I've got 4 other siblings, and I think only one of them has also been to New York City. So it's a different pathway, and I can't really say that it's been anything except for windy and twisty. I guess let's just say windy. So that's my background. I guess I'll turn it over to the next panelist. I don't want to take up all the time here. I'm a professor, so I can just keep talking and talking.
And I could just listen and listen. I love your story so much. So definitely thank you for sharing. The next panelist I'm very honored to introduce is Nelson Rosa. And Nelson is also an amazing story. And I love that Nelson really shows us through his own career trajectory that, you start off in one place and you never know where you're gonna end up. I don't know that Nelson, who's with us from Germany right now, I think it's 9 o'clock over there. So thank you so much for joining us. You really show us that you never know where you're gonna end up. And I'm sure that was something you had probably never really imagined seeing yourself in Germany. I don't know, why don't you share your story?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I just kind of want to thank everyone for hosting me here today. And I look forward to getting to know all of the students throughout today's panel. So as was mentioned, my name is Nelson Rosa. I am the brother of Esther Rosa. So hello, sister. How you doing? As it kind of says in my bio there, I am currently a postdoctoral student at the Institute for Nonlinear Mechanics at the University of Stuttgart. And now I have a fly that has just randomly landed on my keyboard. So I am a postdoc student here at the University of Stuttgart here in Germany, which is in the south of Germany. For those of you who always hear the news about that military base in Germany, it's actually here in Stuttgart, Germany. So it's not too far. I think it's 20 minutes away from where I currently am. So we kind of have that US connection in a sense. I am currently studying robotics, so I am a roboticist. And my primary field of study is in bipedal locomotion, so studying how robots walk around in their environment. And I would say that in terms of my career path, yeah, I would have never have expected to have been here in Germany. But then again, I guess I would say the reason I'm here is because of COVID in some ways. It was kind of one of those things where, I kind of had to think outside throughout my own personal job search. I kind of had to start thinking outside the box. And it just so happened, it's kind of odd how things kind of work out. I actually ended up here because of my research topic, which is in itself, robotics is a pretty specialized field. Bipedal locomotion and walking robots in robotics is also kind of a even smaller subset. And then to find another professor who took interest in my work, which was very specific, how we can generate walking gaits by having a robot essentially stand still, to find someone else that was working on there and also being willing to, and also be on parental leave was kind of, more of a, just a crazy happenstance the way that it all kind of worked out. So part of the reason that I am here is actually I am teaching a course, one of my supervisor's course, while he is on parental leave, and that's kind of how I ended up here. So it's kind of, I would say that in terms of career trajectory, it's kind of always trying your best to be prepared for the moment. You don't know what's going to happen, when it will happen, and what opportunities will come up. But it's always best to do, I think it was Maya Angelou, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so kind of having that kind of mindset, as well as kind of always trying to pursue things that I enjoy, kind of got me to where I am here today. So I've always kind of been interested with computers, And I kind of started in high school working, programming and kind of learning, writing small code snippets. And then that kind of led me into engineering when I went into college. So I kind of, so I pursued, electrical, a hybrid computer engineering. My college didn't have exactly computer engineering, but it was basically a hybrid of computer science and electrical engineering at the time. And I think one of the big things that I kind of learned in college along my path of kind of, always pursuing things that I enjoyed, I kind of realized that I enjoyed working with digital electronics. So basically those little computer chips that you find in your computer, for example, or the little LEDs that you see light up in your oven, on your microwave, for example. Kind of tinkering with that was something that I kind of enjoyed. And I think one of the big experiences that I think if I were to kind of impart is kind of, find a way that, to learn that kind of motivates and excites you. And for me, it wasn't always necessarily learning in the classroom, but actually working on actual projects. And so, me personally, I was able to kind of take advantage of that by working in research labs at the school and working on various research projects that they had there, which eventually got me onto this path of robotics. And I've kind of never looked back from that point on. It's kind of had a mix of all the things that I enjoyed, some computer programming, some working with low-level microcontrollers and hardware, and kind of overall it being just a cool field in general. And then, I took actually a 2-year break to actually work in the field, and actually worked in a non-robotics related field. But then even then, that was an interesting experience. It was also good for me too, because it was one of those things where I kind of realized, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. It was in computer network and security. So although it had to do with computers, I kind of realized through that, although it was, that it wasn't really an area that I enjoyed. So I kind of worked my way back into robotics, applied for a PhD program at Northwestern University, which is in Chicago, which is near Chicago. They do have a Chicago campus, but their engineering campus is in Evanston. And after that, I ended up doing the job search after I graduated, and unfortunately, a lot of the places that I was applying to ended up having a hiring freeze, and so I never ended up finding out what the results were. But it's one of those things where just opportunity arose where there was a position here in Germany where I could have, where I can, at least temporarily, have kind of go on this kind of new adventure, this new not only academic adventure but cultural adventure, as well as I kind of continue to pursue my interest in robotics far away from home at this point. And I'm more than happy to kind of go in depth and answer any more questions throughout the Q&A and during the moderated panel. So yeah, I look forward to hearing what interests you guys as the night here, but I guess the afternoon for you all progresses. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nelson. I completely agree with many of the things that you said, including, and I hope our students are listening, that you should always be prepared, right? Because you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. But we'll definitely touch on that again throughout the panel. Panelist, and I'm super excited to introduce, is Jamila Hardy. And I love the fact that, traditionally you would think, if somebody studies bio, that they're going to end up in a research lab or, maybe in a medical lab. But you work for, as my lovely colleague Nicole Johnson says, a very expensive bacon company. So why don't you tell us more?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here today with you all. So my name is Jamila Hardy. I live in Smithfield area, Smithfield, Virginia. And yes, we make a little bit more than bacon. I work for Smithfield. We are the largest pork producer in the world. So we make all sorts of things, bacons, hams, everything. If you go to smithfield.com, you'll see all of the different products we make. And also when you're in the grocery stores, you can check out all of the Smithfield products as well. A little bit on my background. I went to school locally here at Old Dominion University, graduated there with a degree in biology and went to start work for Smithfield immediately. That was my first job right out of school. I started as a second shift laboratory technician in the food safety laboratory. and then eventually moved up to be the Eastern Region Laboratory Manager for Smithfield, which is pretty much all of the Smithfield labs on the East Coast. But that was an 18-year journey. So that did actually take a while for me to get where I am right now. So I'm looking forward to sharing my knowledge and expertise with you guys, if you can call it that, expertise. And two other things. We do both chemistry and microbiology testing. So on the chemistry side of the laboratory, essentially what we do is what the information you see on nutritional panels, we do that. Also, we do a lot of regulatory testing for the USDA. And on the microbiology side, we're testing for your food safety pathogens, your listeria, your salmonella, and also your general bugs, we'll just call them for right now. So my job is to ensure that food is safe. Our motto is good food responsibly, and we do pretty much go by that at Smithfield. So that's my job, is to entail that you guys as the consumer are eating food that is healthy and is safe. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what I do. And I look forward to speaking with you guys more on the panel.
Thank you so much. I love your story, and I love that you made sure that you addressed it's been a journey, and careers are exactly that, they're a journey, right? So we all have plans,
Absolutely.
we all have places we would like to eventually get to, and it doesn't happen overnight, right? But it's important to keep, going through that journey, learning more. And I love that you say you consider yourself a teacher, right? Because it's always about learning and then kind of paying it forward. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
The next panel, very excited to introduce, is one of our own at LaGuardia, Professor James Richardson. He has been a professor at LaGuardia for, I think Caroline said, about 20 years you've been teaching. And I know you have over 30 years of experience in different areas of digital scholarship and emerging technical disciplines, which I'm sure, especially during COVID, has come in very, you're probably like someone very sought after at LaGuardia because of your background. So please tell us more.
Correct. My name is James Richardson. I'm entering my 20th year here at LaGuardia. I teach in the New Media Technology Department. It's always interesting when, I kind of speak about myself in terms of how I got to this point in my career, because it wasn't a traditional path. I was born and raised in New York. I grew up during the 70s and 80s, if I'm going to date myself. And like most young Black men in New York who grew up in Harlem around that time, my focus was at times not geared towards pure academics. I was an athlete. I was a nerd. I was deeply into music. So those are the things that initially motivated everything about me. I'm not the traditional student. I was fortunate enough to be a decent athlete, so I wound up getting a scholarship to play basketball in Colorado, in a small town in Colorado. Well, small for New York, Colorado Springs. I worked there. I was there for about 2 years. Saw that I wasn't going to go pro by any stretch of the imagination in terms of basketball. So I started to focus a lot more on my education. I'd always had been, deeply involved in nerd culture. Everything from digital media to music, to crafting, drawing, animation, all of those things that nerds generally are into. So as I started to study, I started to gravitate more towards computer science. And I minored in computer science and actually majored in English because I was also very interested in writing. Wound up transferring to Oberlin College and doing some studies at the, Oberlin Conservatory of Music. Took a couple of classes there in digital music. Didn't major in it, but it was something that truly interested me and that I wanted to pursue. However, being a child of New York and being a son of a very strong Black mother, once I graduated from Oberlin College, the first thing that I had to do like many Black parents tell their kids, is I had to get a job. I had a decent amount of technical experience, so I wound up working for a corporation by the name of MetLife. I worked for them for 13 years. So my technical background, the stuff that I studied in college, did help me secure a position there. And I worked there for about 13 years in their voice and data networking department. But I absolutely hated it. Hated everything about it. I hated working corporate. I hated wearing a suit and tie. It wasn't particularly something for me. So as I started to get older and I realized that I needed to take more charge of my life, one of the things that I started to do was I decided to go back and get a master's in what is referred to as interactive telecommunications from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, which is a fancy way of saying everything dealing with digital media, everything dealing with internet studies, digital video, audio, 360, VR, any of the hot new technologies. And I wasn't a particularly great student undergraduate. However, finding or studying the thing that I really was most interested in, following my passion, I did quite well there. And once I graduated, I went to work for a number of the .coms. Didn't really like that either, to be quite honest with you. And during the whole .com meltdown back in 2000, when a lot of companies were overvalued and went belly up, I didn't want to go back corporate. So one of the things that I decided to do was to investigate teaching. A friend of mine told me that she thought I would be a great teacher, and that brought me to LaGuardia. And 20 years later, I'm here. I've taught in the online settings. I was the former academic director of the Communication and Media program at the School of Professional Studies, fully online degree. I teach, or was the senior instructor for a number of years in the New Media Technology Department here at LaGuardia. My interests particularly are everything from, currently right now, I'm deeply into like drone technology, 360 video, augmented reality. These are the projects that I'm particularly pursuing at this point now. And trying to find ways to monetize this knowledge. And by monetize, to get paid off of the content that I create. There's a lot of technologists, a lot of scientists who basically do a lot of work, do a lot of important, exceptional work, but sometimes they're not in the position to monetize the discoveries and the projects that they create. And that's one of the things that I constantly tell students is if you're going to be in this field, find ways to monetize your own content, your own discoveries, your own artwork, your digital art, whatever the case may be. Because the thing that I absolutely love about the field that I'm in now is that there truly are no limits. You can profit, you can design, you can build, and travel. And the work that we're doing right now can be done from almost anywhere in the world with a high-speed internet connection. I remember one of the previous presenters had mentioned that he's in Germany right now. There's tons of opportunities, not only here in the US, but throughout the world when you develop certain skills. I'm interested in talking to any of you guys about this. I'm passionate about this type of work. And there's never been a better time in the history of the planet to be a entrepreneur and content creator. And I'm hoping this, I can help some of you get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I definitely really appreciated that you spoke in terms of being able to monetize your content, because I think a lot of people create really great content, and you're right, they don't know, they have great ideas, but they don't know how to make money off of these really great ideas. So I'm hoping that some of our students can definitely learn how they can market themselves and their abilities and get paid for it. So thank you for sharing. The next panelist I'm really excited to introduce is also one of our very own, Professor Chen. Professor Chen actually teaches math, economics, biology, and he coordinates the math club. So we super excited to have you because I think math is something that a lot of people shy away from, myself included. So it's really excited to hear from someone who decided to make this into a career, something that you're excited about. So please welcome, share with us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. And as you just mentioned, I'm the professor here of math at LaGuardia. So I have the opportunity working with the ASP for many times. There are many great colleagues here, and the ASP students are really great students, of the favorite students here. I want to say my journey come to LaGuardia. Since a lot of you already said you are a traditional student, I'm basically as a traditional student. So my track is come from a school to another school to another school, then eventually landing at LaGuardia Community College. And but I guess I represent another type of the professions. Will be I'm an immigrant, so I grew up in China, and at that time, even at my master degree, I never think about come to overseas or come to the U.S. Then one of my professor told me, "Do you want to go to the U.S.?" I says maybe we should try. Then he helped me to write the application form, of course. So I landing at CUNY Graduate Center. So I get the PhD in 2013. At that time, I got another position, is a postdoc position, and also I got a position at LaGuardia. I choose LaGuardia. I think that's a right choice because of you guys, amazing students here. So I guess one of the big things I guess the students always say is, why we trying to learn this, or what this is used for. So that's one of the things I usually talking with a professor from other discipline, and particularly recently I working with the academic professor and the bio professor. We're trying to pair different courses so suits their needs. So we hope will help the students to appreciate the math. Another thing is I want to say my research basically I have a little bit of overlapping with, so it's also about the complex dynamics, probably a little bit jargon, mainly if you guys ever see some picture at the MoMA, so you will see the fractals. Those are kind of things theoretically that's made by us. Other than sometimes, of course, made by artists, but we are kind of artists who also made the fractals. So that another thing is, as you guys just already mentioned, so I'm kind of also the coordinator of the math club. So we would love to train students for the math computation and guide students for the math research. So welcome anybody join us. So we'll have some fun there. As about the career, I guess we're talking about more during the panel. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Chen. It was a pleasure to hear from you and to hear about your commitment really to ASAP and to our amazing students, because you're absolutely right. Our students are amazing. So thank you. The next panelist I'm excited to introduce is Chiquita Walker. She is currently a food safety manager, but I especially loved your story because I know that you went through a couple of different majors, right? Including having an associate's in nursing, to then minoring in psych for your bachelor's degree. So I know that your career trajectory kind of probably changed from when you first started to where you are today. So without further ado, please tell us more. If you are talking, you might be muted. Try to maybe click mute and unmute one more time, maybe. All
I
right.
think he might have to exit and come back.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to loop back to you. We're going to move on to our next panelist. And don't worry, Ms. Walker, we'll come right back to you. So our next amazing panelist is Danelson Rosa. Let me just get my slide to work here. And he's currently a senior software engineer from the Bronx. And you actually went to Carnegie Mellon, which is an amazing school. And I know that you've worked in corporate and you have all this amazing experience. Please tell us more.
Sure thing, Lucia. Thanks for having me on this call and event. I'm very excited to share my experiences and hope any of it lands in a way that helps you guys move forward within your own careers. If you've noticed and paid attention to my last name, it's Rosa. So I am Esther's other brother, and Dr. Rosa's brother. So it turns out this has become a family affair on here. But the face you, used to just see on this presentation was mine. So I'd love to share a little bit about my experiences and then continue to chat with you all during the panel itself. So as Rocio said, from the Bronx, I went to Carnegie Mellon University, where I majored in information systems. It's a combination of business and computer science. And pretty much since graduating from there, I have been in the tech field ever since. So I worked corporate for over 3 years and then decided it was time to leave and pursue an entrepreneurial idea that I had. And I did that for 2.5 years or so, which led me to teaching for a couple of years. And after I taught for a couple of years in Harlem and at a few schools around the city, I then became a software engineer at a digital agency in Brooklyn. So my career path has been a little windy, but at the root of all, technology has been a thing. And it's always something that has been at the forefront of my mind as far as what it is that I love to do on a day-to-day basis, and just what kinds of things interest me and what kinds of habits I'd like to have related to that. At this point, I'd probably leave the beef of the presentation later on. So with that, I'll leave it there, and then would love to answer any questions you guys have during the panel.
Thank you so much. And I know that you're a new dad, so congratulations. I hear your baby in the background.
Thanks. Yeah, he's due up next.
Yes, him and my daughter are gonna introduce each other.
Mm-hmm.
So congrats on the baby. All right, so we're gonna go back and introduce Ms. Walker, and hopefully all of our technical issues at this point have been resolved. Ms. Walker, do you wanna try this again?
Yes. Hi, can you guys
There
hear
you
me?
are.
Yay! So again, it is amazing to be able to spend this time with you guys. I'm Chiquita Walker. I am from Smithfield, Virginia, also known as the ham capital of the world. Jamila Hardy is one of my colleagues. As you said, I have an associate's degree in nursing from Norfolk State, a bachelor's degree in psychology with a minor in human services, and then a master's degree in health services administration, which is totally different from the career path that I chose as a food safety manager for Smithfield. I wish I had a really good reason as to how things changed in my life. I'm very interested in healthcare. I have worked in healthcare in the past, but I would say that my passion is in food safety, and that is what drove me that way, and that's why I ended up actually working in my passion. I, again, am a corporate food safety manager for Smithfield Foods, overseeing the co-manufacturing business for our company. So I get to go out and audit about 60 or 70 facilities across the United States within the course of a year. I have done several certifications within Smithfield, including black belt and brown belt certification, which really focuses on lean manufacturing, which gave me a lot more insight to all aspects of the business, not just food safety and quality. So I would say that, you know, I've just chosen to be very open and open-minded in my education as well as my career, and really allow my passion to guide my decisions in life. So I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad my computer finally started working. So I look forward to talking to you guys more.
Thank you so much. You know, for a lot of our students, I think it's encouraging for them to see that, you know, you can start off with something and then realize, you know what, this is actually not what I want to do. And that's okay. And it's just about figuring out what you want to do. So in everything, there's a learning moment. And I think it's about finding that moment sometimes. But without further ado, I want to get started with our questions. I know our students, I hear the chat has been extremely busy, but I want to ask, I'm going to start off with the first question, and it's open to any panelist that wants to answer it. Can you share your college experience? So anyone can jump in about what their college experience was like.
I can go if you want. I actually attended 2 colleges. The first one was Colorado College in Colorado Springs. Small, well, from a New York perspective, it was a small town, very little diversity. I was one of the only African Americans on campus. It was a little bit, it was a great school academically, and it had an interesting plan. Instead of having like semesters, they had what's referred to as a block plan, where you take one course for 3.5 weeks, and then you switch and take another course. So for me, who was a little bit at the time, a little bit undisciplined, it forced me to become much more disciplined in terms of how I approach my academic studies. Because you couldn't miss class. You only had 3.5 weeks to learn something like calculus. So it was immersive in the extreme. So it forced me to be much more diligent in terms of learning how to prepare and to, assimilate information. The other thing from just in terms of the academic, aside from the academics, was that it basically forced me to learn how to deal with people other than myself. To sometimes, as a minority, as an African-American man, you may sometimes be in positions where you're in corporate or work environments where you may not, especially as you start to move up the ladder, where you may not see as many other faces similar to your own in these environments. So it becomes highly important that you learn how to deal with people from different cultures, different perspectives. And that was one of the key things that I learned throughout my college years. Because you have to learn, I mean, there's, being good at your job is one thing, but if you're good at your job but can't work with other people, that also becomes a serious issue. So you have to learn how to make connections with people sometimes who you might not typically agree with or hang out with. And that was one of the most important things that I learned from my college experience at Colorado College and at Oberlin.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I think you addressed a lot of issues that our students also feel sometimes. So we really appreciate that. And I know Lucila wanted to jump in. I know there's some students that have really amazing questions. So thank you to the students that are being active in the chat. So Lucila, go ahead, get one of the students' questions.
Okay, so one of the questions is asking, you found your passion, that's great. But the thing that is in conflict is yourself. How do you overcome your insecurities? How do you overcome your doubts as you reflect on the journey you had, but feel that you don't have much improvement compared to others? So it basically sounds a little bit of like imposter syndrome. If any of you have experienced it, how did you overcome it? Anyone can just jump in.
So I'll jump in for just a second on that, because I think this is a common thing that people feel, is that maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe this is not for me. And the attitude that I really think has helped me is just to be like, that's not my call to make, right? So it's not your call to make whether or not you belong there. Like, your job is to put yourself out there, do as hard as you can, take a lot of risks, and you'll get feedback on whether or not like it's the right place for you, right? So people will like maybe not apply to a scholarship or grant because they'll say, maybe this is not for me. That's not your job. Your job is to apply. It's their job to decide whether or not you get the grant. And people will say, maybe I shouldn't apply to this job. That's not your call. You apply. It's their job to decide whether or not you get hired. So you shouldn't be the one holding yourself back. You should just throw yourself out there as many times as you think you need to. You should take those risks. And there are going to be a lot of times you fall on your face or get a door slammed on it, but that's okay. You just go knock on another door or start going forward again. And so it's really just being willing to like hit the wall and fail over and over again and take risks before you see some payoff for those efforts. I don't know if
Thank
that
you, Dr. Brashears.
but that was.
No, you weren't muted. Yeah, we got you. Thank you. That was great. Another question from the students was, is it okay to fail in STEM majors? So that can mean failing a class, maybe failing a semester. And if it is or it isn't okay, what can students do after that?
And anyone can just jump in and address this.
Hi, I just want jump in about that as a professor here. I just want to let you guys know, when I was graduate, when I was graduated from the PhD program, one of the things is, one of my professor told me one thing that I want to share with you. He said, in life, there are a lot of moments that are very frustrated. The thing is, what you need to do is arm yourself to tackle this frustrated moment. So the things I want to say is, if you are frustrated, it's not just yourself. There are many, many people are frustrated. Even to be honest, there are many, many professors themselves, when there was students, they also could be fail the class. So it's not just yourself. I guess there are no issue at all. You fail a class or something. I guess the thing is you take up the energy and you learn the lesson, you know what you want to do next, how to tackle this issue. So I guess that's fine. It's not only to any person, anyone you think who is super smart or super successful, that means he definitely has some down moment. It's not unique to anybody. Yeah.
And it depends, I would say also,
Yes, go ahead.
It depends sometimes on the reason for your failure. All of us fail at some point or another. If they're honest with themselves, there's no one who hits it out of the park 100% of the time. But you have nothing to be ashamed of if you try your best and fail. But if the reason for the failure was because you didn't put in the effort, that's different. And sometimes there are people who have just like a natural affinity to certain subjects. One of the reasons that I didn't stick with programming to the as a full profession is because I was frustrated by it. It didn't come naturally to me. I was okay at it. I could program, but I knew it was something that didn't really kind of resonate within me. Like, if after working on a program for a couple of hours and I found out that the reason it didn't work is because I left off a semicolon, the guys who really did well within that field were the ones who got really excited, like, oh, I found the bug, and they're like just ecstatic. I got a different personality type. If, I was ready to throw the computer across the room if it was just that semicolon that I missed. However, you have to figure out, you know, reasons for failure, and then try not to let that stop you from continuing on if there are other external factors why you failed.
Definitely, I completely agree. It does depend on why you fail, right? And there's many different reasons why people fail. And I feel like that's a perfect segue into the next question. This is a question from a student. And the student wanted to know, the student said, I have changed my major many times because I felt like I would not be good in my field. How do I overcome this?
Quit changing your major.
Quit changing your major.
I mean, I would also kind of also say kind of like, you know, kind of take stock of like what interests you. You know, I think one of those things, it's one of those kind of personal questions of trying to find out what motivates you to kind of, you know, to do what it is that you do. What is it that gets you excited? And try and find a field that reflects that, and also kind of understanding that it's not always going to be, you know, it's not always going to be fun. You know, I'm not always, you know, I've been doing robotics for a while now, and I'm not always like, oh, this is awesome every single day. There are times where it's like, you know, what's the point? Where is this all kind of going? But also kind of also understanding that, you know, at its core, you know, to kind of get through those bad days, at its core, you know, I do enjoy working with robots, and I kind of have things that I kind of, you know, that the good moments are usually, you know, pretty good in and of themselves. And so maybe one thing would be, you know, understand what it is that you enjoy, and then kind of pick a field that kind of reflects that as best as possible, and kind of sticking with it until you realize, you know, maybe this might not be for me, but then also realize that just because you start in one field doesn't mean you have to stick with it in terms of a career path overall as well.
I love that. And Dr. Rosa, since you're talking, I have a question specifically for you. Since you're working in Germany at the moment, do you have any suggestions for someone who is interested in opportunities internationally? And also, how does it feel to work abroad or internationally?
Yeah, I think for me, I was, I guess, knowing you're tapping into your resources and into your network, and always trying to kind of, I think a good piece of advice is kind of, you know, kind of work backwards from what your goals are. You know, for me, you know, I kind of wanted to continue doing research. And it just so, and it happened that in the area that I am in, and it happened that, you know, someone who's working on similar topics, you know, put out a call in a robotics listserv. So this is kind of the whole kind of tapping into your network. And kind of, you know, just kind of monitoring, you know, the job websites, for example, for these types of opportunities. Also, you know, talking with people. One thing, at least for me, when it came to preparing for my move to Germany, was actually reaching out to alumni from my college and from my university, from both my graduate school and my undergraduate school. And I've never met these people, but, you know, the alumni network is there. And so I would kind of like reach out with just basic questions of, you know, is it really true that it's, you know, it's all cash here, and that, you know, cash is the preferred way to pay here? So for example, one of the things that I've had to adapt to here, you know, in the US, I'm so used to just, you know, paying with my credit card. You know, in Germany, everything is basically debit card or cash. And so kind of navigating those types of things. And then also kind of knowing what your support network is like as well, and trying to kind of figure out what's actually out there. I'm sure you guys have wonderful resources here at LaGuardia. Over here at the University of Stuttgart, there's an actual international center. And so when there's something like, you know, when I get my documents in German and I'm like, I can't read this, you know, I would tap into them and they would help me. Or, you know, ask questions like, how do I open a bank account? So, you know, it's kind of like, it's just knowing that I don't have to do it myself, and kind of understand, but I do have to know where I need to go in order to get that help, which I think is kind of like a useful skill to kind of develop and have. So you don't have to know everything, but at least know how to find out the answer the best you can.
Thank you, Dr. Rosa. So we're going to go to the last student question so that we can transition into some mock interview questions that we'll be having some of our panelists answer. So someone posted a question that I actually get a lot from a lot of students. How can a student like myself, a mass communication student, find relevancy within a STEM-related career?
Would it be possible to repeat the question again? Sorry.
Yes. So how can a student who isn't a STEM major find relevancy within a STEM related field?
So I would say that STEM, and others can feel free to chime in too, but I would say STEM isn't necessarily just kind of designing and engineering your system, especially when it comes to the corporate setting. And this is also something that I've kind of also learned in the academic setting as well, and that's being able to communicate your ideas. As an academic, I kind of have to kind of learn and be able to do that on my own. But then at a big corporation, they have people who are skilled orators who are able to communicate and break down ideas into their very basic components so that the everyday person can actually understand. And so if you're kind of in this a field of communication, that's definitely like an area where you can kind of apply your unique skill set and being able to communicate science ideas, because these things, some of these things are very complicated, but it's always that special somebody who can always kind of bridge that gap and be able to communicate what it is that we do on the STEM field and be able to break it down to into terminology that's understandable for everyday people. Because you can imagine, your iPhone is pretty complex, but you know how to use it, and so being able to kind of have that type of communication is key.
Thank you.
you.
Professor Richardson, would you like to chime into this question? Because I know this is kind of within your expertise.
Absolutely. I think Professor Rosa basically had summed up a lot of it. You don't have to be understanding that STEM fields, and sometimes I refer to them also as not only just STEM, but STEAM, science, technology, art, engineering and math. There's a wide variety of areas within it that doesn't require you to be a pure technologist. The point that he brought up was absolutely right. People who can communicate the ideas between the business side of especially within the corporate environment, people on the business side of it and people on the technology side. There can always be people, there needs to be people within that, between those two areas that can help bridge those gaps. And most of the time, they're not going to be hardcore tech people, because there's a different mindset that comes across in terms of being a really serious and successful technologist. Sometimes their mind works on a different level, so sometimes it's hard for them to break down complex terms and ideas for those who are not within technology. So someone who's a communications and speech major can, that's pretty much what you're geared for, being able to listen to what the technologists say and then translate it into common everyday language for the masses. There's any number of different fields that non-STEM majors can get into. It's sales, it's, presentations or presentations of different subjects. So don't let that stop you if you're not a hardcore technologist from moving into the STEM fields. Google, for example, has tons of positions for non-technology based people that are critical for their overall success.
Thank you. And before we move on, I know Danelson wanted to say a few words about this question.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, and Dr. Rose and Dr. Richardson alluded to this pretty greatly. There are a large number of fields where what you choose to do does not necessarily have to correlate with something technical on a day-to-day basis, but understanding it and being able to communicate with team members or colleagues on the technical side of things will go a long way within your career. So sort of understanding both sides of what you do on a day-to-day and who you interact with will definitely go a long way.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next portion of our event, which is going to be our interviewing portion. So I'd like the panelists to think about their own experiences when they've gone out on interviews and to be able to provide valuable feedback to our students. So the first question I pose to the panelists is, can you provide an example of a question that someone in your field should expect? So an example of a question a student should prepare for.
So I guess I would say a common one that I usually applied. So, you know, I've kind of had both hats where I've kind of applied for academic jobs as well as industry jobs. For my industry job, a question that I always came up with would always be, you know, tell me a project that you worked on. Tell me, you know, a STEM project that you've worked on that you're really proud of. And so, you know, I would kind of always kind of look back to, and this is where your course-based, your project-based courses come in handy, because, you know, there are opportunities where you can work on some pretty interesting stuff. And so for me, one thing that I would usually talk about would be how me and a group of students ended up writing, ended up wiring and programming what's known as a single cycle processor. So basically a very simple CPU chip that ended up being able to play an 8-bit version of Snake using a bunch of LEDs, which was kind of cool and always fun and exciting to talk about. And also, if you are in these STEM related fields, and if you can, bring the project with you. It's always, if you can, you know, try and demo it in front of the actual person that you're talking about, and try and hit on the kind of the technical aspects that makes it kind of cool. You know, always trying to find a way to geek out with your interviewer if appropriate and if possible. Might be some kind of secondary advice there. So, you know, think of good projects and then kind of try and see if you can kind of geek out and really enjoy. And, you know, it comes through if you really enjoyed the process. So kind of ask yourself what made it fun and what made it exciting.
Thank you. And I actually wanted to hear from Chiquita. Did you have any advice about this question? So like, what would someone in your field be commonly asked? Is there something they can do to prepare?
Yes. So a lot of the interviews that I have given or participated in are behavioral based interviews. So you get a lot of, give me an example of a time where, and just based on the different job descriptions. And I think people have to understand that it doesn't necessarily have to be a 100% alignment with the job description. You may not have ever worked in a processing facility or a meat processing facility, but you can give an example of when you have worked in, when you figured out a process. And I think people also need to understand that you can give life examples, you can give school examples, you can give past career examples, you can give volunteer examples within your community, within your church. So the employers just want to see that you're able to apply a skill and that you've been able to apply it successfully. So that would be, we get a lot of behavioral based questions in my field. We want to know what you can do and what you have done and what's proven to be successful. So I think that's the best way to prepare if you're going to go into an industry type position or a management type position. You know, we want you to have prior experience, and you just have to be very creative because it doesn't have to be exact experience.
Awesome, thank you. That's actually really good advice. The next question is, how do you prepare for an interview? What steps do you actually take before you go on this interview?
I can jump in on that. The best thing you can do is there's two things you have to do for an interview. And the first is that you have to articulate who you are and why you're valuable. And then you have to articulate why you're valuable to that company or that place. And both of those require that you do some thinking. You actually have to think, what is your skill set? What is your background? What are your interests? And then you have to do a lot of digging on that company or that business and know it as well as you possibly can, and think about how do you fit in there? What can you bring to the table? And it takes a lot of work. When I went on the job interviews for academic positions, like professor positions, I I was hired in 3 different cycles for different professor positions, but I would prepare sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes an hour, 2 hours a day, where I would look up the department, look up the school. I knew the demographics of the school. I knew who the president was, who the provost was. And so I did a ton of research and homework on that institution. And then I also knew myself pretty well. So in the interview, I was able to tell them why I was a good fit for them. And that's what you have to do regardless of the job, whether it's engineering, software, academia, labs. You have to articulate why you're a good fit. And in order to do that, you have to think about who you are, think about who they are, and do a lot of homework on both of those.
Thank you. Kind of a spin off that same question. What advice would you have someone that's preparing for a remote interview? So a lot of interviews now are done through Skype or other platforms that are meant for remote interviewing. Any advice for someone that's preparing for a remote interview?
Make sure to have a good internet connection.
Yes, good internet connection. That's great advice, actually.
I would say prepare pretty much in the same way as you would for a traditional interview. Dress up, shave, shower, the whole process of getting yourself mentally prepared. Just because it's virtual, take the same time to both mentally and physically prepare for the interview. Make sure that the environment that you're in is hopefully conducive to quiet talk and a nice setting. So if there's any other disturbing or distracting information behind you, remove that. Try to make sure that the environment is as clean and as crisp as possible, because you want the interviewers to focus in on you, not on your room, not on any of the other objects or things that are actually going on. And you want it to be hopefully as quiet as possible. For remote interviews, also, one of the things I would suggest is try to make sure that you have a decent camera. I know people don't want to spend extra money at this point in time, but making sure that you have a decent webcam and hopefully a decent external microphone will go a long way to at least presenting the best possible face to the employers that you're trying to connect with.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Well, did someone else want to jump in?
Yes, this is Chiquita. So really quickly,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was on a webinar about a month ago that spoke directly about this, about interviewing during the virtual time. And so a couple of the suggestions they gave were to stand up if possible. People tend to be more comfortable when they're standing up and your computer's placed a little higher. And also, if you want to make notes or jot notes for yourself, stick those notes around your camera, kind of eye level with your camera. So as you're kind of looking off or referring to your notes, you're not losing eye contact with the camera, which is also eye contact with your interviewer. And to also try your connection a couple minutes before it's time for you to be on. Don't try to log on 2 minutes before it's time for you to get on. If you're having technology issues, be sure to communicate that because everybody understands that things happen in this new virtual world. So just being open and communicating, it takes a lot of the anxiety off of yourself and kind of calms you down. If you're ready, you're prepared, and you're in a comfortable space. So those are just a few extra tips that I picked up.
That's awesome. Those are really, really great tips, especially the eye contact one is something that comes up a lot with students when they want to look at their notes, but they also have to keep eye contact. And I think virtually, it's a really good cheat trick that you can't do in person.
Exactly.
Okay, so almost every single interview has this very popular question. What is your greatest weakness? And that's always a very difficult question to answer for most of us. So how do any of you handle a question like that?
don't answer, you don't answer that question directly. You spin that question around to, I had this weakness, then I worked on it, and then I thought about it. But you have to like, you can't just be silly about that and just say some like glaring weakness of yours. You have to use it as a way to talk about your strength, but not in a very obvious way. So it's sort of a question to see if you can reconstruct it in a way that's positive. And it's okay to talk about a weakness that you had that you overcame or that you reconstructed. Oh, and that shows that you're self-aware, but you should not just like blatantly give out some of your like what you think are weaknesses. You should, at least, I think you should put it into some sort of positive spin.
And I
Right.
would piggyback off of what Ali was saying. So definitely not say anything behaviorally or things that make qualities where you would have to work within a team. If they ask you what my greatest weakness is, if you say something like, well, working with partners, or I don't work very well in a group, or I tend to have certain conflicts, I would definitely, if you get caught up with the pressure, stay, you know, because sometimes it is, you feel very stressed and pressure when you're in the interview process, and sometimes you just start talking, but definitely stay away from anything where employers would think to themselves, oh, well, this might be a troublesome employee because already they're talking about conflicts that they have working with other people. And me as a manager who manages people, that is a definite red flag when someone is to say something like that to me in an interview. So I would definitely try to find indirect ways. And then you also want to find a positive spin on whatever it is. You say, okay, I may be struggling with this a tad, but you want to place a positive spin on it. And then at the end say, but I'm a great researcher, or I'm a great critical thinker, or I'm a great person who can multitask, and I am able to work through those things. So just definitely don't leave them with anything negative for them to think about when you're done your interview, and always put a positive spin on what you're going to say at the end.
Thank you so much. So as we know,
Oh, that was it.
I'm sorry? Time flies when you're having fun. And we are almost to the end. So I'm gonna end our panel asking one more question. And I'm gonna provide everyone a chance to answer this question. And the question is, what do you love about your field? So Dr. Brashears, if you care to get started, what do you love about your field?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my answer is everything. I love everything about biology. I love that biology intersects with food science. It intersects with medicine, education, neuroscience. To me, biology is really the epicenter of the universe. And some people think I'm biased, but prove me wrong.
Thank you, I love that. Dr. Rosa.
So I guess one of the things that kind of excites me is kind of the overall just potential of robotics in general. You know, a lot of the things is we always kind of thinking about all these pie in the sky ideals. Definitely pushed upon by like movies, for example. And it's always kind of a driving force behind me that we're definitely not there yet, and we have a ways to go. But how can we kind of get closer? How do we? So kind of the big questions of how can we get even closer than we are today?
Thank you. Love it. Love it. All right, Jamila, what do you love about your field?
Oh, there are several things that I love about my field, but I'm just a scientist by nature, and I think anything science related is extraordinary, and it makes me happy. But about my field in particular is that I'm in food. So I love food. I'm a foodie. So I get to work with food pretty much every day. And I get asked, all the time, do you still eat bacon? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I still eat bacon. I do been on the slaughter floor lots of times, and, we do kill hogs to make bacon and hams and all sorts of those good things that you guys eat but it's very fascinating. There's things that are constantly changing in the food industry, and things are constantly changing with methodology and instrumentations that we use in the laboratory. So I find it fascinating, and I like to share that with people as well, that it's a very interesting job. And sometimes it can be mundane because, you know, there's working in the lab, which is very repetitive. You pretty much do the same things on the different products every day. It's monotonous, but it's also very science centered. There's the data, the numbers don't lie. So if you're into numbers and you're into data, being a chemist would be a great way to go. And if you're interested in microbiology, like I literally get to plate things and put them in an incubator, and they come out and I get to look at them, and I get to look under them under the microscopes, and I get to report back. And it's simply amazing, the things that you can do inside of a laboratory. And with my job right now, I'm kind of not necessarily in the labs because now, again, I've worked my way up through Smithfield. So now it's more of me managing the labs and managing people, and also getting certain types of certifications, which I find fascinating, working hard to put your laboratory at the next level and the next steps. So I think pretty much everything about working with Smithfield or working for Smithfield is fascinating. And I encourage everybody to go to the website, smithfield.com, and check it out. And I also put my email, I don't know if all the students got it, in the chat. You know, feel free to email me anytime with questions. Hopefully I can help. It wasn't easy going through school at all, I say, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever did in my life. And I just got my bachelor's. I went for 4 years, and I was just like, it's not for me. I can't do it anymore. So for those students feeling that, I definitely get that. I was there. I've been asked so many times, are you going to get your master's? Are you going to get your PhD? But it wasn't for me. Where I am now, I'm satisfied with. But I definitely encourage you guys that if it's for you, to definitely go for it and don't stop. Don't take years off. Don't take a break. Just find a way to make continuing your education a part of your lifestyle. Because once you get out of it, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but definitely not impossible. So those are just some of the things I find fascinating about my job.
Thank you. That was pure wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing. Professor Richardson.
The thing that I most like about the field that I'm in is the constant disruption. Things are constantly changing. There's always something new to learn. You can always reinvent yourself. There's new fields that are emerging every day. And even if you're dissatisfied with something that you're doing right now, there's new fields that are coming up, like VR and augmented reality are two areas where there's a lot of potential. When you're looking for jobs in these particular fields, you know, you don't have to worry about someone asking for 10 or 15 years of experience in certain fields, because these fields haven't been around that long. So if you're willing to put in the work, study and develop yourself, you can basically level the playing field. And that's the other thing that I absolutely love about this field. You can have people who have PhDs in certain fields, but if the quality of the work that you're doing, if the programming, if the design of what you've put together is better than what they've done, it really won't matter. Companies are not so much, industry companies are not so much interested in the degree that you have as more as what you can actually physically build and create. And to just go back a little bit about the interview process, in the STEM fields, there are multiple interviews. There are interviews where you have the personality interview, where you basically speak to someone face to face, the traditional ones that we're all familiar with. But then there are technical interviews where they basically ask you to solve a certain problem or challenge right there on the spot. And those are a little bit more difficult to prepare for. The reason that I bring this up is that there's a lot of different ways for you to reinvent yourself and to prepare to move into the fields that you want. in terms of dealing with, interview anxiety, one of the things I will tell you to do is to interview frequently, even if it's for a position that you don't want. Get that type of anxiety out of your system so it becomes familiar with you when someone asks you those type of questions. So there's a lot of different things that I love about my field, but the most important one is that it's constant disruption, constant change, and you can constantly reinvent yourself. It's never over. Even if you're not happy where you are at this particular point, there may be something new tomorrow that's emerging that might be right for you.
Thank you so much. I love it. All right, Professor Chen, what do you love about your field?
I'm sorry. Yeah. The first thing I want to say, I guess I love it because I love math first, because math is a little bit abstract. I'm the kind of person who love abstract stuff. Like you appreciate the painting, the artist, those kind of things. The next thing is, I guess you have the chance to challenge yourself. For example, right now, I write into a problem on Monday. I don't know how to solve it right now, and I don't know if I was ever able to solve it. So it gave me the chance to think about the issue every day. So that's just a challenge myself, and also it's very fulfilled. Another thing that I want to say is, I just want to let you guys know, learn math definitely not just say for the smart person. You have to be a math type of person. You have to be super smart. It's a person who loves to keep on thinking. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Miss Walker, what do you love about your field? All right, I'm not sure if you're muted. All right, so we'll come back to you. And last but definitely not least, the Nelson, what do you love about your field?
As a software developer, I love having the power to code and to build apps which could help other people. It's also really great because, everyone has the next big thing, the next great idea. And so folks often come to me for help to build the app or hire me as a freelancer to build the app. So it's great to work with other folks to bring their ideas to life.
All right, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I know that some of our students may have questions, so I'm going to be putting my email in the chat in case your didn't get answered. Anything I can do to put you in touch with one of our amazing panelists, I'm happy to do that. At this point, we've an amazing session.
Sorry to interrupt. Chiquita wanted to just chime in real quick to answer your question. Thank you, Rocio.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. Chiquita, what do you love about your field?
I think she's still on mute.
No,
this is Jamila. She's
having issues.
She's having issues. She's not being unmuted.
She's unmuted. It's just not. I saw her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear her. See, like right now. Sorry.
She said it's okay. You can close out.
Apologies. This is the nature of working remote. But I'd like to thank all of our amazing panelists. You were all so wonderful. You shared so much in terms of your experience, your own career path, and just yourselves in general. And just thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here. I know it's not easy. Students, thank you. I thank you. The ASAP staff thanks you. Just thank you. And our students for sticking through this event with us and through all of our technical issues that we may have had. Just thank you all. You're all amazing and you will do amazing things. So thank you to everyone. The link to the survey is on the screen. It's also in the chat. Please make sure you fill it out. And I'll stick around for another minute or so in case anyone has questions. Thank you.